Hi, everyone. Welcome to English Story School, the place where storytelling meets language learning. Join us on an exciting journey to improve your English skills through engaging stories that make every lesson memorable and fun. Have you ever felt like time is slipping through your fingers? Like the world is rushing ahead, and you're left behind, watching the moments pass without any control? I've been there, waiting for the perfect opportunity, hoping for the right moment, and thinking, if I don't act now, I'm falling behind. It's a mindset that pushes us to rush, to force things into motion. But over time, I learned a powerful lesson. Patience isn't just a virtue, it's a superpower. There was a time not too long ago when I believed that every single thing in my life had to happen on my terms. I was obsessed with the idea that if I wasn't always advancing, constantly moving forward, that somehow I was falling behind. This pressure, this relentless need to keep going, was like a shadow that followed me everywhere. Every day felt like a race against time. If I wasn't ticking things off my to-do list, I felt like I was wasting time, like I was somehow less than everyone else who seemed to be achieving more faster. It was a mindset that came with a lot of self-imposed stress. But here's the thing about rushing. No matter how fast you move, the results don't always follow suit. In fact, the more I push myself to the brink, the more I realize that rushing, rather than speeding things up, only caused more problems. It wasn't helping me achieve anything faster. It was wearing me out. I was spinning in circles, pouring energy into projects and goals, only to see them become more disjointed and frustrating the harder I worked. I would finish one thing, but it always felt like there was something else that needed my attention, something I was still behind on. I was constantly thinking, if I just move faster, if I just work a little harder, I'll get ahead. But the truth I wasn't acknowledging was that the more I pushed, the more I was exhausting myself. I wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't making good decisions. And I certainly wasn't enjoying the journey. It was all about the destination, all about getting there. But then one particular moment, an experience I'll never forget, made me realize how flawed my approach really was. I was in the middle of a huge project, something I had been working on for months. The deadline was fast approaching, and the pressure was mounting. I had given everything I had to this project, and yet, no matter how hard I tried, things weren't falling into place. It was as if every step forward was met with 2 steps back. I was frustrated, feeling like the world was against me. The harder I tried to force things into motion, the more out of control they seemed to become. That's when it hit me like a brick wall. It wasn't the work that was the problem. It was my approach to it. I was so focused on pushing and forcing results that I had lost sight of something fundamental. Sometimes you need to step back and trust the process. In that moment, I realized I had been so obsessed with pushing harder, faster, and moving on my own schedule that I had completely overlooked the importance of patience, of letting things unfold naturally. I had been trying to control every aspect of the project, thinking that speed would bring results, but it was actually the opposite. My impatience was causing more harm than good. So, I did something I had never done before. I took a step back. I took a deep breath and stopped forcing the process. I allowed myself a moment of stillness. I gave myself permission to let things happen in their own time, rather than trying to force everything to fit within my rigid timeline. And like magic, the solution appeared. Not because I worked harder or faster, but because I created the mental space for it to emerge. It wasn't instant. It wasn't a lightning bolt of inspiration, but the clarity came when I was willing to stop pushing. That experience completely changed the way I viewed progress. I realized that rushing through life, trying to speed things up, only leads to burnout. It robs us of the quality of our work and the joy of the journey. And the more we try to force things to happen on our timeline, the more we miss out on the beauty of growth, the evolution of ideas, and the natural unfolding of events that we can't always control. I learned that real progress doesn't come from doing everything faster. It comes from understanding when to slow down, when to trust that things are happening exactly as they should, and when to allow space for the process to work its magic. That lesson was a turning point for me, and it's one I'll carry with me forever. Rushing doesn't make us faster. It makes us miss the moments that matter most. There was a time when I poured every ounce of my energy into a project, an important one that I had been working on for months. It wasn't just a simple task. It was something that required dedication, focus, and countless hours of effort. Every day I gave it my all, waking up with the mindset that today would be the day I'd move closer to the finish line. The work was intense. Late nights, early mornings, and the pressure mounting as the deadline grew closer. At first, I felt a sense of accomplishment as I ticked things off my to-do list, convinced that the more I put into it, the quicker I would see the results. I became obsessed with progress, with making sure that every minute of every day was productive. If I worked harder, surely I'd get closer to the finish line. The more hours I put in, the more things I pushed forward, the more I believed I was forcing success to happen. I thought that if I just threw enough energy at the problem, the solution would present itself. I was so focused on the grind, on that relentless, never-ending cycle of action, that I couldn't see how much I was losing along the way. But as the deadline loomed larger, something unexpected happened. The more I tried to force the project forward, the more out of sync everything felt. I wasn't making the breakthroughs I had hoped for. The pieces of the puzzle just wouldn't come together. The harder I worked, the more disjointed the process seemed. Each time I thought I had a solution, something else would go wrong, or I would hit another roadblock. It felt as though my relentless drive to finish, faster, harder, more, was pushing me further away from the outcome I so desperately wanted. It was at that point, when everything felt like it was falling apart, that the realization hit me with full force. I had been so wrapped up in the idea that success was about constant, nonstop effort that I had overlooked one crucial thing. Patience wasn't about doing nothing. It was about trusting the process. It wasn't about sitting idle and waiting for things to magically fall into place. It was about stepping back and allowing the natural flow of the work to unfold. I remember the exact moment it clicked. I was sitting at my desk, staring at my screen, feeling utterly drained. My mind was foggy, overwhelmed by the constant pressure of trying to do more. I was so deep into the weeds of the project that I couldn't see the bigger picture anymore. Everything was a blur of tasks, deadlines, and a mounting sense of frustration. And then, out of nowhere, it struck me. I needed to create space, not just in my schedule, but in my mind. I needed to take a step back, breathe, and give myself the mental clarity to actually see the solution. It wasn't about forcing more work, pushing harder, or hustling through the exhaustion. It was about stepping away, even if just for a moment, and trusting that the next step would present itself when the time was right. That's when I realized how powerful patience could be. It wasn't passive. It wasn't about waiting and hoping things would work out. It was about giving yourself the room to think, to reflect, and to allow the solution to emerge organically. Instead of bulldozing through, I decided to pause, take a walk, clear my head, even do something unrelated for a while. And you know what happened? In that pause, the clarity I had been desperately searching for came to me. Not through more effort, but through space. The key takeaway from that experience was profound. When you trust the process, you allow yourself the freedom to stop forcing things and let them unfold in their own time. By stepping back, I didn't just make space for the solution. I created the conditions for it to appear. That mental shift changed everything. I didn't need to rush. The answers were there all along. I just needed to stop fighting so hard to see them. This was a turning point for me, not just in that project, but in how I approach challenges in life. I realized that patience isn't about idly waiting or being passive. It's an active practice of trusting that things will unfold when they're meant to. And sometimes the best action you can take is to step back, breathe, and let the solution reveal itself naturally. That moment, when everything clicked, completely shifted my perspective on how I approach life, work, and even my own growth. It wasn't just a simple lesson about slowing down. It was a profound realization that patience is not passive. I used to think that being patient meant sitting back, waiting for things to fall into place, and doing nothing until the results arrived. But as I reflected on that experience, I began to understand something deeper. Patience is an active choice. It's about consciously choosing to trust that things will unfold in their own time, at their own pace, and that there's value in that waiting period. At first, this was hard to accept. I had spent so much time chasing the illusion of immediate results, rushing towards the finish line as if it were the only way to prove progress. But when I let go of that urgency and stepped back, I saw a completely different picture, one where the process itself was just as important as the end result. And that's when I realized true patience isn't about idly waiting. It's about giving yourself permission to trust the timing of life, to allow things to happen naturally. I began to think about nature. If you look at the way a tree grows, it's the perfect metaphor for how we should approach our goals in our lives. A tree doesn't rush to grow. It doesn't try to speed up its development just because the world around it is moving quickly. Instead, it focuses on establishing its roots, deeply anchoring itself into the soil. It knows that only by growing its foundation can it withstand the winds of change and adversity. The tree doesn't bloom overnight. It takes its time, spreading its branches, reaching for the sunlight, and gradually becoming stronger with every season that passes. Nature doesn't force growth. It allows it to unfold at the right pace. And that's exactly how we should approach our personal growth, our projects, and our goals. We might not see immediate results. We might feel like we're stuck in a waiting period, wondering when things will take off. But in that very waiting, we are building the foundation for something far stronger and more meaningful than any quick success could provide. Just like the tree, we are quietly growing, sometimes out of sight, deep beneath the surface, establishing the roots that will support our future achievements. Think about it. When a tree first starts growing, it's focused on spreading its roots, not on blossoming. The roots may not be visible, but they're crucial. Without them, the tree would never stand tall, and it would never bear fruit. This is how patience works for us. We may not see the immediate fruits of our labor, but every moment spent in patience is a moment where we're strengthening the foundation for something greater. It's not about rushing through the steps, trying to force results. It's about trusting that in time, everything will come together when we're ready for it. I began to see that the most meaningful results don't come from haste. They come from allowing ourselves the space to grow, learn, and develop the necessary skills and strength to handle what's ahead. The waiting, the quiet moments, the periods where it seems like nothing is happening. Those are the times when we're building our roots, strengthening our resilience, and preparing for the eventual bloom. And when it does happen, when the moment of clarity or breakthrough finally arrives, it's not just the result of hard work. It's the result of trust, patience, and the wisdom to know that some things can't be rushed. In those moments of waiting, we often feel like we're falling behind, like we're not moving fast enough. But in reality, we are quietly, steadily growing, setting ourselves up for success in ways we might not see in the moment. It's only when we look back that we realize how far we've come, how much stronger we've become, and how much more meaningful our growth has been. So now, whenever I'm faced with a challenge or a moment of uncertainty, I remind myself of that tree. I remind myself that true growth doesn't come from rushing or forcing things to happen. It comes from trusting that everything has its own timing, and that by focusing on the right foundation, whether it's our mindset, our skills, or our emotional resilience, we're positioning ourselves for something much more powerful than a quick fix. Patience is the quiet strength that allows us to withstand the storms and wait for the right time to blossom. It's not a passive state of doing nothing. It's an active practice of trusting, allowing, and building something stronger and more meaningful than we ever imagined. Here's the most powerful truth about patience that I wish I had understood much earlier in my life. Patience doesn't just help us wait, it actually accelerates our progress. I know it sounds counterintuitive, right? The idea that slowing down, taking a step back, and waiting can actually speed things up. But I've experienced it firsthand, and I can tell you, it's a truth that's absolutely transformative. For years, I believed that the key to success was pushing harder, moving faster, and trying to make something happen every single moment. I thought that progress meant constant action, relentless effort, and a never-ending push forward. But the more I tried to force things, the more I realized something was off. I was busy, yes, but I wasn't always productive. I was spending so much energy running in circles, doing tasks without a clear direction, hoping that something would work out eventually. And I was burning myself out in the process. That's when I had a breakthrough. I realized that true progress doesn't come from mindless activity or frantic hustle. It comes from giving ourselves the time and space to think, to reflect, and to understand what we're really doing, why we're doing it, and how to move forward in the most effective way possible. In other words, patience isn't about slowing down just for the sake of waiting. It's about intentionally creating space to make better decisions. The power of patience lies in its ability to give us clarity. When we take the time to pause and reflect, we can see things more clearly. Our minds are no longer clouded by the pressure to do something right now. Instead, we have the mental and emotional room to step back and evaluate our options with a calm and collected mindset. We can think through our next moves, weigh the pros and cons, and come up with the best course of action. Think of it like this. When you're rushing, everything feels like a blur. You're moving fast, but you're not necessarily moving smart. It's like driving a car at full speed without checking the map. You might get somewhere eventually, but you're more likely to miss key turns or run into obstacles along the way. Now, when you approach life with patience, it's like slowing down to read the map, making sure every move is calculated and intentional. Yes, it might take a bit longer, but every step you take is a step in the right direction. You're not just running around hoping to get somewhere. You're navigating with purpose. Patience lets us work smarter, not harder. Instead of pouring endless energy into tasks that might not move us forward, we're conserving our energy for the things that really matter. We stop trying to force outcomes and start focusing on the right actions that will lead to sustainable, long-term results. When you're patient, you don't feel the pressure to act impulsively. You know that, in time, the right opportunities will present themselves. And when they do, you'll be ready to act with confidence and clarity. For example, when I look back on moments in my life where I rushed decisions, whether in my career, personal relationships, or projects, I see how much I was influenced by external pressures. The urgency to move quickly, to keep up with everyone else, led me to make decisions that weren't always in alignment with my values, or my long-term goals. I didn't take the time to reflect, to really think about the best course of action. I just moved, and in those moments, even though I was busy, I wasn't always effective. I didn't have the clarity to make the most informed decisions, and as a result, I often found myself stuck or backtracking, wasting more time and energy. On the flip side, when I've allowed myself to practice patience, when I've given myself permission to slow down and reflect, I've made decisions with far more intention. I've been able to evaluate the situation more objectively, understand my options fully, and choose the path that will lead to the greatest return in the long term. And the amazing thing is that those decisions, though they might take a little longer to arrive at, always seem to lead to better outcomes. The progress I make is more sustainable and meaningful because it's grounded in thoughtful, deliberate action. At first glance, patience might seem like the art of sitting still, of waiting for things to unfold in their own time. And yes, patience does require us to embrace waiting. But it's far more than just doing nothing. Patience is about being intentional. It's about knowing that stepping back to take a pause, even when the world around us is pushing us to move faster, is not a waste of time. It's an investment in our clarity, in our ability to make more thoughtful decisions, and ultimately, in our success. Think about it for a moment. How often do we find ourselves rushing from one task to the next, pushing ourselves harder and harder, thinking that the more we do, the better the results will be? We convince ourselves that constant movement equals progress. But in reality, this frantic activity often leads us nowhere. It burns us out, overwhelms us, and leaves us feeling scattered. We're so caught up in doing something that we forget to ask ourselves, is this the right thing to do? That's where patience comes in. True patience isn't about simply waiting for things to fall into place. It's about actively choosing to pause, step back, and reflect. When you take a step back and give yourself permission to breathe, you're not wasting time. You're making a conscious decision to clear your mind, to take stock of where you are, and to gain a sense of direction. This pause isn't about procrastination. It's about investing in your mental clarity. Now think about the power of clarity. When you're clear about your goals, about what's important, and about the steps you need to take, your actions are no longer random or desperate. They become intentional. Every step you take, even if it feels slow, is a step in the right direction. And that's what's key. Progress doesn't always look like rapid movement. It doesn't always feel like you're making huge strides. But the difference is every small, intentional action you take is aligned with your larger vision. It's purposeful. Compare this to the chaos of rushing through life, thinking that more activity equals more success. When we act without clarity, we're just moving for the sake of moving, often without considering the best course of action. And while we might feel busy, we're not necessarily moving forward. We're just spinning in place, running around in circles. It's a bit like trying to drive a car while looking only at the rearview mirror. You may be moving, but you're not going anywhere meaningful. But when we act from a place of clarity, when we've allowed ourselves the time to reflect and think through our choices, our actions carry purpose. Each step we take, even if it feels like we're moving at a snail's pace, is grounded in a deeper understanding of what's best for us. It's deliberate and directed toward a specific goal, which means each step gets us closer to where we want to be. And here's the best part. By choosing patience, you're not burning yourself out in the process. You're not scattered, overwhelmed, or constantly fighting against the clock. Instead of feeling drained and frustrated from always hustling, you're moving forward with a sense of calm and control. You can navigate challenges with clarity, make decisions with confidence, and continue to build momentum toward your goal. It's like walking through life with a compass. When you know exactly where you're going, You're not distracted by every little obstacle or detour. You're not rushing to get somewhere, only to realize that you've missed the key turn along the way. You're not working harder just to keep up. Instead, you're working smarter, moving with purpose, knowing that each step you take is exactly the right one for where you're headed. Imagine this. When you slow down and act with intention, you're giving yourself the space to really think things through. You're creating the mental bandwidth to make decisions that are in line with your long-term vision. And as you move forward from that place of clarity, you avoid the mistakes, the energy drains, and the setbacks that often come from acting in haste or without direction. What may seem like a slower path is actually the faster path in the long run, because your actions are aligned, effective, and sustainable. Patience, then, is not just about waiting. It's about choosing to move forward with clarity. It's about trusting that the right actions will reveal themselves when you allow yourself the space to think, reflect, and choose intentionally. It's the difference between rushing forward at full speed without a map and moving forward with purpose, knowing exactly where you're going and why. So, the next time you feel the pressure to do more or to move faster, remember this: patience is an active choice, a choice to slow down, to step back, and to act from a place of clarity. You're not wasting time. You're making a powerful investment in your future. And when you act from that place, your actions become far more powerful, purposeful, and impactful. And the beauty of it? You're not burning yourself out in the process. You're not scrambling to keep up. You're moving forward with intention, and that's how lasting success is built. Think of it like planting a tree. You don't plant a seed and then immediately start pulling on the stem, hoping it will grow faster. You water it, give it sunlight, and wait. It's the patience of letting nature take its course that allows the tree to grow strong and sturdy. And the same is true for us. Patience gives us the space to grow, to make decisions with wisdom, and to move forward in ways that build a solid foundation for the future. So, the next time you find yourself feeling like time is slipping away or that things aren't moving fast enough, remind yourself you're not falling behind. You're laying the groundwork for something meaningful. Whether it's a project, a relationship, or a personal goal, trust that the right results will come when you give them time. Because in the end, the best things in life are never rushed. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.